That was Kentucky Congressman James Comer joining me on this program yesterday, referring to the 150 suspicious activity reports that Jim Biden and Hunter Biden generated. He says that the Biden family likely committed a crime through that influence peddling while Joe was vice president. Comer is vowing to get to the bottom of it if Republicans take power in November. Joining me right now is Pennsylvania Congressman, member of the Foreign Affairs Committee, Scott Perry. Congressman, thanks very much for being here. Your reaction to what we've seen and to your colleague Comer's remarks.
Well, Jamie Comer is absolutely right. And I think what you're seeing right now is a rush to make sure that we don't unpack what is essentially in King Tut's tomb, right? The Democrats and the Biden family know what's in there, and they don't want the rest of the world to know. And they've been able to keep it from the public for the last 2 years with distractions and quite honestly, just by ignoring it. But they sense that the Republicans are going to take charge in the House, as they should. And when that happens, there's going to be hearings, and we're going to start daylighting all this information, this treasure trove from the Hunter Biden laptop, as well as the information found in open source reporting from the IRS, from the banks, et cetera, that not only implicate Hunter Biden and James Biden, but most importantly, the president himself, which is what this has really been all about. And so I expect them to try and look at some low-level, things like the gun purchase and maybe a falsification on the application or something like that. But just let me tell you this, Maria, America cannot sit still for that as the answer to, well, we've handled this and now the scales of justice have been evened out. We need to know exactly if there was influence peddling, especially with our enemies and our adversaries. That's China, that's potentially Russia through Ukraine. And we need to know who was involved and to what extent. And the only way we're going to find out is if James Comer, Jim Jordan, and the Republicans in general that are in charge of the House and the Oversight Committee, Judiciary Committee, subpoenas issued, people coming in to testify, answering questions about the documents.
Well, that's what I want to ask you about, because the banks reported and the open source reporting tells us that there were 150 quote-unquote suspicious activity reports. So the suspicious activity reports refer to what? Money in and out of the Biden family accounts, and we don't know who was sending that money. I mean, is this tax charge that the Washington Post says is coming for Hunter Biden, is it related to money that he received from foreigners and didn't pay tax on?
That's likely the issue, this, just as you know, Maria, these suspicious activity reports, banks are required to make these reports on many occasions, and there's a lot of Americans that just draw these reports as a matter of course. But these are markedly different in volume and in who's involved. But my point is that it cannot stop at that. Hunter Biden is Hunter Biden in and of himself is not really he's not a lone actor here. He is working in concert with people that are making the connections for him. The connections that are made for him that cannot be made or would not be made for your average citizen. Yeah. Because of his family's involvement in governance and government in the United States. That's really the crucible. That is the crux. That's where we need to take a look.
And I just want one more question on these suspicious reports, because I know that Congress used to have access to the suspicious activity reports, but Joe Biden changed that.
Yeah, isn't that coincidental? So at the same time, we pass a bill to fund 87,000 armed IRS agents. Congress can't take a look and do its oversight on things that potentially would involve him and his family. It's just very coincidental. We're going to have to get through that, obviously.
Yeah. So he changed the idea that Congress would have access to the suspicious activity reports when he got in office. That was incredible. I want to get your take on what's happening in Ukraine, because air raid sirens are ringing out in the country as Russia fires rockets at Kyiv and other cities. It follows that deadly day of Russian strikes. Ukrainian President Zelensky is going to be addressing President Biden and the G7 nations virtually today during an emergency meeting later this morning. What are you expecting there, and your assessment of this war today?
Well, look, it should be pretty obvious. Unfortunately, this has turned into a proxy war between the United States and Russia, and we need to find out if there was a way out earlier in the term in March where Russia would have removed forces in exchange for having Ukraine agree not to join NATO. We need to find that out. But in the meantime, I think it's a good sign that Germany is going to send some some air defense artillery into Ukraine. It is high time that Europe gets involved in its own backyard in defending its own backyard, and that the United States not being required to pull the lion's share of the weight. But we should see this for what it is. We all want to help. Nobody agrees with what Russia has done. We have to know what the end game is here, what the strategy is. War is hell, and when you attack your neighbor, there's going to be consequences. Russia attacked Ukraine, obviously. Ukraine has answered. Russia didn't like it. They have the capability to make it hurt, and they are making it hurt. It is horrific to see. We need to know where we're headed right now.
All right, we'll leave it there. Congressman, good to see you. Thanks very much. Congressman Scott Perry joining us this morning.